You're listening to a main feed episode. Go to patreon.com/Celtic Ligers where €5 a month gets you weekly full-length episodes, stray bonus content and access to the back catalogue. Also helps cover hosting and gives us money for sweeties. Thank you. Celtic Ligers.
Recorded 13th of December 2023.
Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm, and if this doesn't work, I'm just going to switch to the USB mic entirely. But
you have a USB mic. What's wrong with the USB mic?
It just picks up every noise in the room. So I had it on the last day, and it was fucking. This is directional. So,
okay. Well, this is the last time I'm going to say this. Welcome to Celtic Ligers. We have a wounded liger.
Yeah, he has 4 wisdom teeth down, baby.
Yeah,
slightly compromised, and the recording is reflective of that.
We're talking about going to the dentist and how you have to be fucked in the head to be a dentist.
Yeah, because you have to see the most disgusting shit.
But we're done with that.
We're done with that. But I wanted to mention though, because I was under the anesthesia, then I woke up. Okay,
yeah.
And then next to me there was like a nurse, but I was like, it was like when I had like a few drinks, I was going like, what's your name? What's happening? You know, and then she's like, Maeve. And I was like, Maeve, man, this is like those videos online. Do you know those videos? You know what I'm talking about? Because there was a video that I'd seen where somebody...
Charlie bit my finger.
Yeah. No, there was a video I'd seen where it was like this girl, I think she'd gotten wisdom teeth out. She just had surgery and she was waking up and her mum was there, okay?
Yeah.
And this girl was like crying. And she was talking about how much she loved Matt Damon. And she's like, he's so beautiful. And she's like crying. And she goes, I want to suck his dick. And then they're, Kelly, no. I do, Mom. I want to suck his dick. And then like, I was like about to regale her with that. And then I just called myself. I was like, actually, that's not a story that you tell like a person.
Yeah.
Outside of your.
Yeah.
So then I was like, hey, do you want to know a joke? And then she was going, sure. And I went, what do the Titanic and the Sixth Sense have in common?
What?
I see dead people.
Oh, yeah.
And she went, right, yeah. Have you heard that one before? No.
Then why aren't you laughing?
Yeah.
I feel like she should laugh at that joke.
She should have been a little... I mean, she was all right, you know. But it was funny because, like... I was like, oh, where, you know, like, she was like, where are you from? And I was like, Galway, but like, I'm in Cork now. And then she goes, are you liking Cork? I was like, oh, I love it. And I was like, are you from Cork? And then she's like, yeah. And then she said an area of Cork. I can't remember where it was, but it was an area that I remembered in that moment and didn't say. But Mark Maloney was like, I wouldn't wish that place my worst fucking enemy.
Oh yeah.
He just hated this place. He thought it was so, and it was like there's nothing really wrong with the area. I think he said that he just like when he's driving through it, he just fucking hates the feel of the place.
Yeah.
Do you ever have that?
Yeah.
Where it's just like there's something in the roots of this place that is just disgusting.
Mm.
But anyway, but I was like, hey, my friend talked about that place. And then and then she goes, you're talking about him again? You mention him on every episode of Celtic Ligers.
Did you tell her we had a podcast?
No, thankfully.
We need to get the reach out, man.
Yeah, that's true. Hello, this is me recording on the 14th of December, 2023, the day after we recorded the episode you're about to hear. So I'm on the mend from surgery. I also had an allergic reaction to some antibiotics. Yesterday was the first time I'd spoken maybe more than a few grunts in 5 days. So the podcast is the most meandering thing we've ever recorded. And normally I would keep that just the way it was, but I really did find it hard listening to myself struggling to make some points on something I'm actually pretty fascinated by. So I thought it'd be nice to myself for Christmas and drop in to put a finer point on some things. I won't be making a habit of this, but we basically have a conversation about political literacy in Ireland regarding some pretty basic fundamentals of politics or whatever. We read an article and just the various responses. You'll hear it, just how hard it was to not get pulled in a bunch of different directions because everyone seems very confused right now. including me. I swear it wasn't until like 2018 where I kind of started to think about political leanings at all. Like if you'd asked me about it, I'd have probably just been like, oh, I just like support what works and I don't support what doesn't work, or something. I don't know. Like I wouldn't have even recognized like Fine Gael or Fianna Fáil as right-wing parties back then. But now I'd say, yeah, I'm firmly on the left, but I still have a hangover from that time where I kind of have this, this, you kind of shudder saying things like that because you're like, oh, you have some fucking notions, don't you? Or I think I have to be super educated on these things. And I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder because I didn't study a very academic degree. My thesis was on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm no great reader either, although I do try. So yeah, I just think maybe a lot of Irish people maybe feel like that as well. I think the pandemic has also created some pretty mad political mutations. So it's just something I'm interested in. This podcast, it is what it is. We talk about like, it's two friends having a conversation about politics, current affairs, that type of stuff, or just whatever we're into. And, I feel pure intimidated when I hear other people talking about politics with confidence, or just a know more than me. And I want to know things, but I just continue to not know things. But I come from myself with the great words of the philosopher Stavros Halkias, paraphrasing now. You don't have to be smart to be a socialist. I'm a socialist and I'm dumb as shit. So yeah, I might nip in and clean up some points I made. Maybe I'll do it less than I'm anticipating. Hopefully James won't be too pissed off. He doesn't listen to these episodes anyway, so it doesn't matter. I don't think I'm doing it out of vanity. As I say, this podcast is just like a conversation with us about, it's a conversation where we're just figuring shit out in real time, and this is more of that. So yeah, see you in a bit, or maybe not. Let's see. How's my audio you're in? How are you hearing me? Do I sound like loud and...
Yeah, you sound loud and clear.
Okay. One thing we absolutely have to talk about. Because I was like, got 4 teeth out of my head. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do it this week. And then this article came out and I just thought it was amazing. And I thought all the replies to it were also like amazing. Did you see this? The majority. Wait, what do you want to talk about, by the way? Am I cutting across you?
No.
Okay. On RTE.ie /news /no. The headline reads, majority of Irish journalists identify as left-leaning. Okay, so this is where I wanted to jump in, and we have now with us the unofficial third mic, who never has a mic, Zainab, sitting there, so it's good to bounce stuff off of her. So yeah, I'm basically, we're about to get into a conversation about this article, okay? And it's about how journalists in Ireland perceive themselves as left-leaning, okay? We're kind of taking it on the assumption that people know what left and right-wing are. And people think they do, and I think I do. But then whenever I have to interrogate it, I'm like, am I just saying that left-wing is good and right-wing is bad? But it is such a reductive way to think about it that maybe isn't any better than those people who are like, well, right-wing good, left-wing bad. So I just wanted to break it down into its component parts to be like, this is what we're talking about, all right? So I was like, okay, I'll go to Wikipedia to get the definitions, okay? Generally, the left wing is characterized by an emphasis on ideas such as freedom, equality, fraternity, rights, progress, reform, and internationalism, while the right wing is characterized by an emphasis on notions such as authority, hierarchy, order, duty, tradition, reaction, and nationalism, okay? Obviously, politics isn't simple. There's all these fucking degrees and books and shit and people talking about it. In the simplest terms, left wing means the state should evenly distribute accumulated resources. Right wing means the state shouldn't be involved in distributing resources. It should be an arbiter between individuals and enforce the rules that we've all theoretically agreed to live by. Okay? Because I just really want to keep it down to like the most basic things. So you read this article and they go, these journalists think that they're left-leaning. Okay, what does left-leaning mean? What does left-wing mean? What does right-wing mean? Here's what they mean. Those are the most basic things. So then when you look at what left-wing means and what right-wing means and what politics means, okay, and then you see the output of Irish journalists and the stuff that they do you think that corresponds with what these things are meant to be, you know? Anyway, that's enough. I just wanted to put that in. Sorry for rambling, but I just thought it was worth breaking that down in relation to this thing. Yeah. The headline reads, majority of Irish journalists identify as left-leaning. Okay.
Lies.
And I can't remember who shared it. But anyway, there's two different versions of this story. One is basically that in DCU or UDC, I was about to say. Let me just read it, get it right. Yeah, DCU. There was a new study carried out by the School of Communications. So RTE just break it down and go like, well, here's what they just kind of were like, here's what the thing said and blah, blah, blah. And then the Irish Times broke it down, but then, so I'm getting too excited already. But the Naomi O'Leary tweets out, a third of Irish journalists have been sued in the last 5 years, according to a new survey. 77% of journalists describe their role as to monitor and scrutinize those in power. And I just really like those two things where it was like, RTE put out, the majority of Irish journalists identify as left-leaning. And people's response were like, no. And then, the Irish Times were like, a survey came out that just revealed how fucking embattled we are with these truth tellers that have to get out there and say it. And the comments underneath each of them have just been like, have just like melted my brain in either direction, you know?
Okay. So first of all, the Irish media isn't like...
Yes.
Is not left-leaning.
No.
Maybe in comparison to like Israel. Mm-hmm. But that's about the height of it.
Well, what they do is the thing is they believe themselves to be left-leaning.
Yeah, but it's just insane. Like, that's just... Because the way so much of journalism works in Ireland is like, you just get into bed, metaphorically, with a TD or someone in power, and you try to build that relationship. And then that's like a source for you. Yeah. And it's like, if that's an operating principle, you can't be left-leaning. No. Because otherwise you wouldn't, develop that relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think it's also, you have people like Gavin Riley and you have people like Naomi O'Leary, and then you got most of the people in the Irish Times. And the reason that they believe themselves to be left-leaning is because culturally or broadly speaking, maybe they're like, I voted to repeal the 8th, you know?
Yeah.
And so...
Do you think Gavin Riley considers himself
Absolutely.
left-leaning?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He believes himself as a centre-left person, you know?
That's mad. He's such just a robot. Do you know what I mean? It's mad that he thinks he's leaning in any direction.
But the thing that is missing from their own self-analysis, if whatever, let's just take this at face value. This is what they think about themselves. There's bits in this. I mean, I should have highlighted the necessary passages, but here we go. However, 71% of journalists surveyed said being a detached observer was very / extremely important to their work. Okay,
right.
So, I know I'm going very broad with this very early on, but you have Naomi O'Leary, you have Gavin Riley, and then you have even Stephanie Preisner. Now, she's not a journalist, okay? But culturally, she's gay people are all right and we should be allowed to have abortions, okay? And then the stuff when it comes to finance, housing, all of the things that would actually define your politics as left or right, they just accept the general orthodoxy because they're that's the center. That's the common sense approach, what these people are adopting. And then it's they kind of don't see that as I'm actually having an opinion on this when I, invite on Darragh O'Brien to talk about housing for Ireland,
Yeah, they're just like, that's the normal, the status quo.
Yeah.
And that's neutral.
But obviously it's like, the Overton window in Irish journalism is just like, it's all over the fucking shop. I mean, the centre, as I, in my opinion anyway, doesn't exist, really.
To me, the centre is Brendan O'Carroll.
Right.
He's just an oaf who doesn't understand most things. And but has a small bit of compassion. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, people shouldn't be homeless. But at the same time, I don't want to give up my house to give a homeless guy a house. And it's like, no one's saying you should have done that. You know what I mean? That's the mood. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like...
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It was even about Dan's mixtape, is that like Dan will say, something like people against profit want to steal your house by having, by making a referendum to guarantee everybody's right to a home,
Yeah.
That's what he'll say. And then in the next sentence, he'll say, like, and the way we stop them, okay, we have to step in and, like there was something he said, basically, that amounted to the government of this case must intervene and take the profits away from the energy companies and disperse them to, like, people,
Yeah.
And he's like, these left-wingers want to enact communism to steal your house. And then also saying, we need the government to take the money off of these private companies and disperse it to the people. And it's like, those are like ideologically just all over the map, completely inconsistent,
Yeah.
But like, that's how it comes down to, like, left, right. Like, people don't seem to understand the definition of left and right. And then the journalists as well are just like, by accepting the orthodoxy as the center, and that they are, like, progressive in these little ways. They're like, oh no, I'd definitely be left-leaning. It's like, no, you're left-leaning from a right-wing position. Doesn't, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, it's all sort of like, oh, it'd be great if it worked, but everyone knows it wouldn't work.
Exactly.
Because of some thing I've made up in my head. Like Eamon Ryan, when he was like, public transport being free would be great, but then people would just be taking unnecessary trips.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not real.
Yeah, but like with him and politicians, when they're saying this stuff, I'm just like, they're just hoping to get through the end of the sentence. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and the inconsistency makes sense then, because it's basically trying to avoid, especially with Eamon Ryan, avoid saying the things that you actually believe, okay?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Eamon Ryan is like...
And you're also trying to avoid committing to anything.
Yeah, exactly. But like, Eamon Ryan believes in capitalism and the free market, and he is just a right winger. That's it, okay? But like, he has to have this kind of, because of the Green Party, he has to kind of come out as like progressive in certain ways, I guess. So like, and it's like, so he's saying, it's like, oh, they'll make more unnecessary journeys, therefore it'll increase, the risk to the climate.
He's sort of rationalizing a gut feeling. He's like, he just doesn't want people to have free transport.
Yeah, because of things that he actually believes.
Yeah.
But then he needs to explain it in a way that more aligns with the politics that he's supposed to have to make this kind of coalition work, essentially.
Yeah.
But like, so you have that, but what was my point? But yeah, I guess just to say that the comments underneath it then was like, a lot of the people I know just going like, oh, that's obviously the stupidest thing in the world. Like, all these people are right-wing assholes.
Who tweeted it out?
Well, RTE tweeted it, and then Paulie Doyle tweeted it, retweeted that. And then, but the comments underneath it, and the comments underneath Naomi O'Leary were like, those type of guys, leaning against the bar, scoffing, just going like, he's like, sure, we have, like, they're literally saying, we have the most left-wing government in the state's history. They're like, oh no, obviously they're all left-leaning because the leftists are in control. And that's what, and I was just like, basically I was like, you kind of see the journalists not knowing anything about political ideology. And then you see like some sort of average punter in some sense, not understanding ideology at all either, you know? Left and right just become things I do or do not like, you know? But another thing that's been very funny is Naomi O'Leary will tweet this out, okay? So she tweets out, like I said, a third of Irish journalists have been sued in the last 5 years, according to new survey data. 77% of journalists describe their role as to monitor and scrutinize those in power. I'd love to see some of that. But she's been really on like Je suis Harry McGee, you know, all of his stuff with Chris Andrews, that Sinn Féin are trying to silence critical voices in the media against them. So that's the kind of thing that she's been kind of, you know, the way that the media normally references the IRA, you know, they'll go IRA and then that just evokes Sinn Féin and you know, fuck Sinn Féin. They're also trying to do it with like media censorship from high-ranking rich politicians trying to sue investigative journalists like me or Harry McGee. And then they'll be like, oh, I wonder who they're talking about there. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then like, yeah, so she goes, people who read this and think, good, are you crazy? Think of a rich and powerful person you don't like. Do you want that person to be able to censor what you're allowed to know about them? And like, Naomi O'Leary just chases Claire Daly through Brussels, going like, why don't you condemn Russia? Why are you Putin? You know what I mean? Like, she's like, oh, do you know what I mean? Like the Irish Times, when they're talking about like, we hold the powerful to account, I was like, absolutely not. When you look at like the Ditch, and the Ditch are the only ones who could make this case because they've like done stories on Sinn Féin, is one of them we have to talk about today. But like, you got like, you know, basically just wanton corruption throughout Irish politics, regardless of party. And it's like holding powerful people who are abusing their station to try and get more than the average person.
Yeah, like they do focus more on Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, but that's, you know, because they are the government party.
Yeah, but also because they are like, yeah, well, and then when you're in government, you have the most opportunities to be corrupt and venal.
And Sinn Féin is this weird, like, they do sue people a lot, but there is this weird thing where, like, the media do hate them.
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like, openly hate them. So, I read a thing and it was like, why don't they go to the press ombudsman or whatever?
Yeah.
Or, like, the press council or something. And it's like, well, they don't like them either. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you're not going to
exactly.
get a fair... Like, the whole media is openly against.
It was, yeah,
Sinn Féin.
it was that amazing article you sent me from, well, you tipped me off to from the Phoenix, where they're talking about Chris Andrews and his legal trouble, and the way that they laid it out was fascinating as well, because they were like, Gavin Riley, Naomi O'Leary, they didn't say her, but she did do this, and like all these journalists were like, this is the article that Chris Andrews is getting upset about, and it turns out it wasn't the article they were getting upset. He was seeking legal advice over. It was one that was published like a week or like a few days prior, which quoted the same thing and kind of was more spurious. And like he went to talk to his lawyer and his solicitor or whatever and said, you know, is there grounds for something here? And then the solicitor was like, yeah, I think so. And then that's what happens, you know? And then they act like it's this insidious thing, which is like Sinn Féin see an opportunity to go after, you know, the hard-working journalists on this issue and whatnot. And but anyway, then the Phoenix break it down. They're talking about like the way that the media has reacted to be like, this creates a chilling effect, etc. And then they have like, you know, I'm going to be bouncing around, but in this Naomi O'Leary tweet again, like what happens is people sounding off in the comments. Okay, so this woman responds, is there a breakdown of the type of litigants taking legal action against journalists? And Naomi O'Leary goes, I don't know from this survey. From my own report that I wrote for Global Free Media, you know, Poindexter.com or whatever, it's particularly common among developers and landlords. Among politicians, it's across the political spectrum. So she has this article, and then you click through to it, and like they list off some of the examples, but it'll be like, a man sues a small radio company for saying a story that he claims said this, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't know who the man is. You don't know what the claim was. You don't know who the radio station was. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like a big long list of these things, and it looks like horror. That's really impressive. But then when you get into the Phoenix article, let me just pull this up. Phoenix profile Chris Andrews. Why didn't I have this open already? But then they list off one of the things that they mentioned at the council that, you know, that people are saying you should go to these guys if you have a problem, and then most of them are made up of like former editors of the Irish Times in this council. You know, it's like, why would you get a fair hearing there? You know, as you were saying, but and then to see the where is it? However, given the history of Sinn Féin and the Troubles, negative coverage of its TDs and personalities tends to be more dramatic and outrageous, often involving charges of illegality, subversion, and so on. So they list off some of the examples. Because of the context of most such stories, many Sinn Féin TDs feel obliged to take legal action when accused of serious crimes and bad behaviour. A year ago, Shane Ross wrote of four-party TDs, Gerry Adams, Mary Lou McDonald, Maurice Quinlivan, and Angus O'Snodig, who had sued for defamation. So then they go, Adams had been accused by an anonymous special branch agent in a BBC Spotlight programme of sanctioning the murder of an MI5 informer, Dennis Donaldson, even though security and Republican sources all believe dissident Republicans killed Donaldson. Should Adams have ignored this allegation or perhaps gone to the press ombudsman? In 2020, Mary Lou received an apology from Fianna Fáil TD Declan Brannock, in which he said, "In 2018, I wrongly accused Miss MacDonald of being a hypocrite and someone who condoned the murders of members of An Garda Síochána. I deeply regret that I made those unfounded and damaging accusations, and I should retract them in full." Should Mary Lou have shrugged her shoulders and failed to take legal action against the charge of supporting the murder of Gardaí? When Quinlivan was a councillor, he was accused of being connected to a brothel by then Defence Minister Willie O'Dea in a local media interview. Again, should Quinlan have ignored this comment? Would Ross or Annie Fianna Fáil TD? Joe Duffy, live on air during his RTE Radio Liveline programme, accused O'Snodig of having been convicted of a public order offence involving a Garda. This was factually incorrect, as the person so convicted was Mrs. O'Snodig. RTE had to apologise to the TD and pay €100,000 plus in damages. If Sinn Féin is really implementing a calculated scheme to plunder the depleted coffers of its media enemies, it appears to have some unwitting allies on the inside. So anyway, I just thought that was funny, where it's like Naomi O'Leary is like, oh, it's shocking. Here's a list of all these, crimes where, or like all these times where people have sued media outlets, but we don't know who they are, we don't know what it was over, and we don't know the outlet in question.
Yeah.
And then once you hear examples of the type of stuff, then you're just suddenly like, well, actually, the context is really relevant. We need to know, like, it's not just to say like, oh, I'm really scared of being sued just for telling the truth. And I was like, well, what truth were you telling? Do you know?
Yeah.
Like, what was...
Yeah, I know. Like, they really just go off on Sinn Féin in a way that they would never do with like the other two big parties. Like, they'd be terrified of saying anything about that. Like, you can just see like how the Ditch is always bringing out stories about corruption in the big two parties, and it all seems fairly easy. It's not like
if you're looking, you'll find it.
Yeah.
And like the thing about it as well, like when Pascal Donoghue was on, remember during COVID there was something about like babies' shoes being exempt from purchases or something, and then like allowed purchases that you could make or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, it was like what counts as a
necessary purchase, yeah.
And then it was like, what about baby shoes?
And they were like, baby shoes didn't count as a necessary purchase, and then somebody compared that to a tax on baby shoes that Garrett Fitzgerald's government had done that was very unpopular back in the 1980s.
Yeah, children's shoes have always been exempt from VAT, I think.
Something, yeah.
And then he got rid of that, so you have to pay VAT on children's shoes.
Yeah, so like they just brought up this comparison, which is like, like...
extremely fair.
I mean, it's fair, but also like it's incredibly benign if you think about like the comparison with Sinn Féin, where it's like, you know, like some of the articles that we've seen, like where it's like, isn't the guy hurling racist abuse at the guard exactly the same as Mary Lou when she's being mean on social media?
Yeah,
Do you
or
know?
like, do you remember at the start of the pandemic, just before?
Yeah,
So there was the election in 2020.
20, yeah. It was early
2020.
2020, February.
Was it? And then they held like public speaking rallies.
Yeah.
Sinn Féin. Do you remember?
Yeah, and they compared them to like fascist
like-
rallies.
Yeah, they were like, "This is Trump coming to Ireland. This is."
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, they're just talking to people. You
Yeah.
know?
And like, but like, with that thing on RTE, then of course, like, they apologized to Pascal Donoghue for making that comparison.
Really?
They made like a public apology, like days later, to be like, "Oh, we're sorry, we made that comparison to you, the Minister for Finance, who is like a fucking like one of the
Yeah.
most like he is so suited to be the head of the IMF. It's insane, you know." Just
Yeah.
like, I don't give a fuck. I hate all these people. Look at my little Funko Pops. They just to show that I have a little fun side to my personality. Also, I
Yeah.
read books, and it's
It's
just
my
like,
off-brand Funko Pop collection.
There is an idea of a
Pascal Donahue.
some kind of abstraction, but there is no real me, only an entity, something illusory. And though I can hide my cold gaze, and you can shake my hand and feel flesh gripping yours, and maybe you can even sense our lifestyles are probably comparable, I simply am not there.
you know, when like he's talking like Davy stockbrokers, like, I really wish you wouldn't do that. You know, like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, or oh, I really
Yeah.
hope that mortgage holder, you know, I really hope that the banks don't take in mortgages or whatever. I don't know. I don't care. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, his one thing is like, as long as the line goes up and the coffers are like full, so the GDP looks good, and I can like put it on my CV to get a job at the IMF, I don't give a fuck what happens to you people. I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah. I wonder if we're going to see a real move now. Like, because he's going to the IMF, or like he's trying to get that job.
Yeah.
And then the other fella, McGrath, from Fianna Fáil,
Yeah.
he's trying to get a job.
As European Commissioner.
Yeah.
RIP Big Phil, you know?
And they're just like trying to basically cash in now. And I think there's a whole generation, particularly in Fine Gael, of politicians who are like, I'll go into politics, raise my profile, and then get a good job somewhere.
Yeah.
Like that's what Owen Murphy did back
Owen
in the
Murphy,
day.
yeah. Like, and like, but like all of
like
them are
for-
going like, I'm not running it next time. And it's like, you're just like fucking heavy hitter after heavy hitter is falling out of the fucking thing.
Like
It's
even Varadkar was like, I'm not going to be in politics forever. I'm going to go into
Yeah.
the private sector. And like Simon Harris said similar stuff. And it's like, I wonder if now are we going to see, because Fine Gael, like I think they're happy to sit out in the next government, or not happy
Yeah.
to, but like understand that they might. And then I wonder
yeah,
if
it's like,
a lot
this
of
is
the
happening. Yeah.
I wonder if a lot of the upper crowd will just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go get a real job now where I
Yeah.
can make proper money.
But also they're trying to like, basically they're just trying to shit the bed before they have to hand it over to possibly Sinn Féin, possibly
Yeah.
Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin. It doesn't really matter. It's like, you know, it's like, I hate Fianna Fáil and I really hate Sinn Féin, and I'll just, you know, like they said this in the last election, they were like preparing to be in opposition, and then the pandemic happened, and then they got like a brief reprieve and a second wind essentially as well, with Varadkar with his fucking movie quotes and like, we'll dance again someday, and then
Well, yeah.
you know,
Well, the other thing they did is that they stayed in government, months and months,
yeah,
until they got popular enough and figured out a mandate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how long were they in government? How long did
it must have been like start of March until about the end of May, I think.
It was longer than that, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was that long for them to, you know, hold their nose and go into coalition with this ungodly
that
coalition. But like,
Yeah.
then we had to wait until August for it to like kick off, and then
Yeah.
as soon as it kicked off, it was like Golfgate done. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
fucking hell. Like, it was
And,
just
like-
those months from August until January of 2022 or 2021 were just like the most insane. Like it was capped off by Micheál Martin saying that the banks weren't bailed out. That was like one of the last truly remarkably insane things that they did. I mean, because it was like, you know, they had, first of all, they had Golfgate, massive scandal. Then they had Phil Hogan, who was at Golfgate, but that became a whole thing. Then they had Justice Wolf, if you remember that. Yeah. And then they had the mother and baby homes, which, awful. And then, and then they had, there was another thing, there was one or two things that Leo the Leak, obviously. Like insane. It's just like insane shit. And then capped almost with like the banks weren't bailed out. And then it was like, I was just like in a row. Oh, yeah. And then Barry Cowan, like, remember when he got caught for drunk driving and he had to. I know. I mean, it was just such an insane time where it was like, they were like, oh God, like this unlikely formation of government. Can this even work? Oh, I guess it can, because the journalists all got behind it. And then all of this shit was happening. And it's just like, the journalists were like, oh, I wonder how they're going to weather this one. It was like, way to hold power to account, you fuckers. Like, this is what you're saying. 77% of you were like perfectly fine with this continuing, you know? I forgot about lockdown as well. Remember when they they had like a bunch of shit with lockdown where they basically opened up all the shops for Christmas, massive peak, and then say, oh, I wish there was a way that we could have avoided this. And it was like, there was a way. There was such an obvious way.
I know. It's mad, like, it's a bit of a random link, but it's just they really do prioritize business. You know, like, after the riots in Dublin, so much of it was like Neil Richmond being like, people must go back and shop in the city centre. We can't let them win. And it's like, you're not going to talk about the migrants or like people of other races who are like rightfully scared. And it's like, no, I'm looking out for the you know, the guy who runs Zara on Henry Street.
Or like, did you see that video that he made, or are you talking about that?
What was the video?
He made a little video of him walking around town going, oh, it's perfectly safe. Look at me not getting my head caved in. You know? And then it finishes with him with like, and having a cheeky pint at Grogan's or wherever the fuck he is, you know? Like, and just his fucking meathead lifting up a pint, you know? And
Dublin is an absolutely brilliant city, and at Christmas it's simply magical. And those of us of a certain age, we know what the 8th of December means. Thousands and thousands of shoppers coming up to Dublin, coming into town. So this year, more than any other year before, we need people to come into town, to come up to Dublin. Come do your shopping, go for that pint, meet that friend, have that meal, hey, maybe visit Santa. And remember, after all that Christmas shopping, a pint of plain is your only man. Cheers.
It's exactly as you say. It's just like some of the reactions to this where it's like our precious tourism, our precious small businesses, and then the vintners, like somebody made an amazing point about this. I mean, maybe it's worth, I was like, I don't want to get into the habit of just reciting what people say online, you know, but like, it's nice to have a catalogue of some of these things that are happening. But this guy whose name is @MootIreland, so he has a picture of, Richmond holding up the pint, and he's, so this is accompanied with the text, I'm teetotal now, but seriously, enjoy the pint only means in a licensed premises. The minimum pricing on alcohol in supermarkets implemented in 2022 failed to curb alcohol consumption because it wasn't designed to. It was lobbied for by the vintners, and all profits go to the supermarkets. It wasn't even a tax. And now there's talk about a tax levy on alcohol bought in supermarkets. You're just punishing addicts and people self-medicating who are poor. It doesn't affect the type of bellend who votes Fine Gael and doesn't care that 3 pints cost €20. I'm tired of all this. Alcohol is obviously deleterious in many ways, but it can be the only bit of relief people have from time to time. Can we fucking address the problems in society that lead people to drink more, like financial instability, depression, stress, chronic pain, the overbearing control work has in our lives, etc.? Maybe if we had a half-decent healthcare system, people wouldn't need to self-medicate, and if you're disabled, you're just left to rot in this country on a punitive state allowance.
Like, increasing the levy just by that much is not going to stop people drinking. So, like, it's purely punitive. And there's no reason to punish people for drinking. Like, there's no excuse for it.
But it's like them attempting to corral people into the spots where they want them to drink, you know? Because remember, everybody was drinking cans at home. They got used to it during the pandemic, and then the vintners were like, fuck this. You need to make... And then people were drinking cans in South William Street, and it's like, no, fuck this. You need to get in the pub. And so they're just like... they're just doing this to try and guide people in. But then, like, exactly as you're saying, it's like, oh, my poor vintner society have been hurt. You know what I mean? I'm out here and I'm lending my support to you and, like, saluting the brave pub landlords out there who, like, by the way, did not get... whose business was affected. Their premises weren't destroyed. The pubs weren't destroyed in this thing, you know? It's just that people mightn't want to hang around in town or feel safe in town. They're like, don't worry, you can still have your cheeky pints, you know? You can still have your, cheeky Nando's. You can still buy your cheeky, you know? We're just like, it's just so, like, it is so grim. It's like Neil Richmond and Pascal Donoghue, that mindset of like, you know, you people don't exist. You exist to serve the market. And when my precious market is wounded, I'm like out in a heartbeat.
I know. Like, it really is shifting the whole thing. It's like from citizens to like customers of the state or like service users of the state, you know? Yeah. That's genuinely how they see us. And then it's like, that lends itself to then this comparison with tourists, and they're like, well, they're all service users. Tourists are just temporary service users, and they spend more money. So let's design the whole, and also the people who live here, they're captive. They're a captive market. So like, they're going to spend money anyway, so let's just fuck them over, and then we'll reorganize the whole city around tourism, because that's like a target, that's like a market we haven't captured yet. Yeah,
and they like literally, like, you know, the way that we were always talking about like Boris Johnson being like reading the classics and being like, I'm like Napoleon, you know, and when he was talking about like, you know, all of the stuff with COVID and whatever, it's like, I'm a general on the line and I, you know, let the bodies pile high, and, you know, like he's like trying to navigate this stuff, but there's always this imperial mindset that's informing what he does, and, you know, his bloodthirsty kind of support of Ukraine or whoever the bully is of the day. And I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that about Ukraine necessarily, but like the thing that happens with Russia invading Ukraine, and what ends up being the most sickening to me is the liberals being like, finally, a just war in my lifetime, so I can show I'm just as bloodthirsty and saber rattling as everybody else out there. And they love the aesthetic. They like I brought it up again and again, but like, you know, the politicians who are able to head out to these areas in flak jackets and look very serious. Or I'm on the UN Security Council and I get to do all that. And
I know
like, that they love it. They love that, like, shit. That's
It's mad how people used to laugh at Trump. Remember, there's the thing where he was like in the truck. Yeah. And he was pretending to drive the truck, and he was like, people are like, oh, it's so funny that Trump just wants to cosplay as a truck driver. Yeah. And it's like, Will Martin wants to cosplay as a soldier in Israel. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it's all cosplay. It's just,
but like
being a truck driver is cool.
But with that stuff, it's like literally like, oh, I get to be fucking Captain America. Do you know what I mean? I get to be a superhero. Whereas this stuff, it's like, I get to be the best manager at a massive Tesco's.
I know,
You know? I get to be the manager of the Dundrum shopping centre, where it's like, maybe if I put, you know, the Starbucks over here next to Penny's, I'll catch these people when they're coming out, and we can, like, you know, they're like, the way that they see it is just like, is such an unpleasant way to look at it. You know,
they might as well be running Supermax and just trying to figure out how few chips they can put in a bag and still call it a bag of chips. You know what I mean? And
there's
then they're like, we maximised our profits.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we use paper tablecloths in the dining rooms, which increased, efficiency because we didn't have to wipe down the surfaces. And
Yeah.
it increases it by a decimal point of such and such. And on the happiness index, we're rated this, that, and the other. And it's like, and actually, we got everybody's employed. And it's like, yeah, everybody's employed as like, precarious Deliveroo riders who are just like, have to provide their own uniform, provide their own bike, get paid basically, per delivery. And I don't know, whatever. You know what I'm getting at? It's just like, at what cost does this work? And then, the other thing I wanted to bring up, and it's kind of a clunky way to put it in, but just because I mentioned Ukraine, and I was reminding myself because of COVID, I think that like we've also become a lot crueler since COVID, and a lot of it is because we spent like 2 years indoors, where they would get on the radio or the TV, and they would be like, this many thousands of people died today. Okay.
Yeah.
This many thousands of people died. This many thousands of people died. And then once we get to the end of it now, it's just like, you suddenly see stuff like Ukraine and Russia. You see like Israel and, what they're doing to Gaza. And it's all these like, they've just become numbers almost. People are like numb to this human suffering almost. And like the politicians find it easier to like get behind conquest in a way that they haven't for years, like.
Yeah, I think for me, this sort of cruelty and aggression, it's like, it's just this low-level traumatic response, like a low-level PTSD that everybody has. Because in a lot of ways, the lockdowns were more brutal than they needed to be.
Yeah.
And then no one has the cognitive energy to, like, be kind, you know what I mean?
Yeah, or like revisit that time, like, because I even forgot, because I was listing off, I remember all the things that happened with Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and the Green Coalition in the early months. I forgot everything relating to COVID.
Yeah,
because I've just like blanked out COVID in my head.
I know, like it's literally like a trauma response,
I know. Yeah.
I'm gonna make a cup of tea and then we'll do the next hour.
Okay, can I just say this one real quick? Can I just say there's this little bit here where like, just to cap off that thing with the journalists, a third of Irish journalists have been sued in the last 5 years, blah, blah, blah. Naomi earlier tweets that out. And then the comments underneath it are really funny because they either come from people who go like, Martin McMahon, who's like his big hobby horse is bogus self-employment. I can prove beyond all reasonable doubt that the Department of Social Protection and Revenue conspired with RTE to mislabel hundreds, if not thousands, of employees as self-employed in order to provide RTE with an unlawful competitive advantage over 30 years, and it's all fraud. There isn't a journalist in the country who will touch it. And then they have underneath, now this guy is a bollocks, but like this was one of probably the most despicable things that happened in Irish politics that happened to him. Do you remember Councillor Oisin O'Connor? He was a Greens councillor in Limerick. And he called Willie O'D a racist bollocks. And then
no, I don't remember.
This is from 2021.
Okay.
And we talked about it. So you should remember. No, but anyway, Oisin, so he has a mixed race family, okay? His wife is black.
Oisin does.
POC. Yeah. And his kid is obviously mixed race. And so Oisin O'Connor called Willie O'D a racist bollocks, okay? And then in the Times or the Telegraph or some British paper, there was... they wrote this up. They said, Willie O'D demands apology for this guy calling him a racist bollocks. And they put up a picture from his Facebook page of him and his family. Not even just a picture of him, like a picture of him and his family. And like, he was like, can you take this down? Because like, you're just leaving me an open target for fucking racists, okay?
Yeah.
And then one of the journalists in the Irish Times, who I hated with a passion for 2 years, and I can't even remember his fucking name. Do you know that guy, Mark Paul? Do you remember him? This like greasy piece of shit, just like looks like a lizard. And like, he like, the whole time throughout COVID, he was saying, basically he was essentially a COVID denier, although because he's probably left identifying. He doesn't see himself as a COVID denier because he's just asking questions. But you remember when mandatory quarantine was in, where it was like, if you've been abroad, you have to stay in these like hotels for like 2 weeks. And he was like, this is insane. This is inhuman. This is sick. And it's like, people do searches of his Twitter and it's like never a mention of direct provision. And he went on about this for ages, just about how awful it was that these people who'd gone on holiday to Italy had to stay in a hotel for 2 weeks. And then he also around Christmas time, he was saying that it was safer to go out to the shops because you're less likely to get COVID than you are in your own home statistically. Yeah. Okay. And then after the spike happened, he was like, oh, well, you know, there's no way to know. And it's like, there was like so much weight. It was so obvious that if you have a bunch of people congregating from different households, that those spikes are going to happen, you know? But anyway, so somebody was like, Hazel Chu shared that, just going like, wow, this is disgraceful that they did this to Oisin O'Connor. And Mark Paul just goes, I don't know. He is a bit of a bollocks online, you know?
Really?
So usually I would just do some text-to-speech thing here, but sure, fuck it, I have the mic out, so I might as well record it. Here is the exchange. Hazel Chu, September 5th, 2021. I expected a lot more from At Times Ireland. Oisin O'Connor may be a public rep and the photograph posted on social media, but the Times Ireland still owes a duty of care here, especially to the child. Solidarity with that Oisin O'Connor and his family. So this is obviously retweeting the picture of him with his family. Mark Paul goes, to Hazel, and also he tags another Green councillor, I believe. Yeah, in Cork City Council, Dan Boyle. To Hazel and Dan and others commenting, there is a major difficulty with this guy in that he is habitually abusive and profane to people on social media. He is a rogue tweeter who regularly brings at Green Party Ireland into disrepute. Don't lose sight of that amid his complaining. So Dan Boyle then responds, still not a justification for the use of the picture and the captioning. Mark Paul says, some might say that is debatable, but the Sunday Times can defend its own editorial cause. But your man's proclivities on social media are a known quantity. He has form over and over again. This is his carry-on, hasn't been addressed by the party, is frankly an indictment of you guys. So he's now giving out to the Greens, who, for anybody who seems to be calling out the Times for using a picture of this guy's family in an article that could very easily stoke racial animus towards him and his family. His family, I don't know. Anyway, still, to this day, is one of the most despicable things I've ever seen, and I can't believe this guy still has a fucking job. And he just was like, that is the editorial decision of that paper. And then people kept like, what do you personally think about it? He's like, I'm just saying it's the editorial decision of that paper. And then like months and months later, do you remember there was a Tory MP, I think his name was David Ames, and he was murdered in his constituency office.
Oh, yeah.
To death. So then Mark Paul wrote a whole article for the Irish Times about how this is actually such a dangerous precedent. This is how all of the rhetoric is being amplified online by people and is leaving them open and targeted, like our public representatives open for attack, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the same guy who was saying it's actually okay to attach a picture of this guy's family to an article that's going to incite a bunch of racists. Yeah. Because I don't like him because he was mean to me on Twitter. And then this is the same journalist who, like, again, Naomi O'Leary is like, yeah, 77% of these journalists are like trying to hold the powerful to account. But yeah, the absolute last one I have to say here, and I'm sorry, I'm holding you up.
No, it's good.
But this one is so good, okay? So like the one that I referenced previously, this woman goes, is there a breakdown of the type of litigants taking legal action against journalists? And Naomi O'Leary shares that article of just all the just things that happened in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And this woman responds, thanks. I think a breakdown of the occupation of the litigants cited here would be useful. And then this woman, Emma Gillese, okay? Emma Gillese is architectural historian, this is her bio on Twitter, with a passion for 20th century. Communications manager for RUE AG, what's that? Anyway, Ireland offshore, writes for RTE Culture, probably sees herself as a journalist, okay? And she writes, in my cases, one was a politician. The other is a solicitor who's also self-styled herself as a president of an environmental group she founded that is against active travel. Okay, and so she's kind of going like, well, these are the people who came after me, you know?
Yeah.
And then Emily O'Connor, doing God's work here in the comments, just goes, you're the woman in the Leaden TD WhatsApp group who abused other women and called them cunts. Sometimes legal action is necessary. No wonder people are not paying TV license if RTE considers language like the cunt word culture. Okay, so this was a thing. So there was a guy, Brian Leaden, who's a TD, and I believe is like, you know, he's got some fucking. So yes, Brian Leaden. Bit of background on him. He's a Green Party TD. He is. Let me try and find it. The chair of the Oireachtas Environment and Climate Action Committee. And this is from the Irish Times. Headline from August 31st, 2021. Brian Leaden will not be sanctioned by Green Party over comment about female councillor. It's like a WhatsApp group with a bunch of Greens in Limerick. And they were just giving out about this independent councillor called Alyssa O'Donovan, saying that she was unhinged and craving fame and all this type of shit. And then at one point, I believe somebody put a picture into the chat with her, and they just put cunt underneath it. So a lot of people are upset by that. It's misogynistic. But he's just your average shithead Green, and I'm just gonna play you out with him saying how much he hates neutrality. Okay.
I think the Irish people don't want to be neutral. I don't know what the difference between politically neutral and military neutral is in any case. I think it is right that we're responding to the way that we are, but as a union, it is right that we stand up to Russian tyranny, because if we merely condemn the tyranny in Ukraine, then we're going to see Ukraine overrun, and then Moldova, and then Georgia, and then Poland, and then the Baltic countries. That is the reality of it. And I don't believe anybody in this house wants that to happen.
It's like that type of Green where like the only thing that they can think of is punitive, right-wing, boring, whatever. Just not deep thinkers at all, but also just like incredibly mean and bullying personalities. But anyway, Emma Gillese tweeted 30th of August 2022. She goes, the two women were very selective in the pieces of the chat they gave the journalist. Even where I was complimentary, saying that Lisa was good looking and that even I, as a straight woman, would sleep with her. They made sure this quote said by me was always gender neutral. So what this woman's trying to do, she's trying to say, when this person wrote this hatchet job article, they tried to imply that a man said that they wanted to fuck this woman. Actually, it was me, a woman. So the text in question, okay, so this is like a sample of the article. It says, at 8:38 a.m., Deputy Leaden posts 3 laughing emojis. 3 minutes later, he posts, might be worth retweeting that. It is not clear what he's referring to, and Green sources have insisted it was not the slur. But at no stage did Mr. Leaden respond to the side-by-side juxtaposition of the slur with his emojis. So basically he called, like, some female politician a cunt in this chat, okay?
Yeah.
And, by all accounts, if she's a sock down now, it's probably incredibly benign. So anyway, he goes, so then the article continues. At another time, the group speaks of Mrs. O'Donovan as, quote, craving fame, and a member suggests that they'd sleep with her, saying, I nearly would if that drunk, and she didn't talk.
Fucking hell.
So that's what Emma Gillese said. She was like, I'm actually a journalist and I've been threatened by these two high-ranking people, and like, that's really fucked up, isn't it? And then Emily goes, you mean, like, what are you referring to? Is there you were in a group chat where you were saying, yeah, I'd fuck her if I was drunk and she didn't talk. And then you tried to pass that off as if like owning them by their own logic. Or like, you're like doing a weird like clap back to kind of go like, actually a woman said that, not a man, like you suggested. It's just like, it's just wild. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's so many examples in the replies of people just saying, well, actually this is a case that happened to me and the media didn't back me, or this is an example where, you slandered somebody and, you're pretending that it was nothing. Do you know? I don't know. Anyway, it goes on and on. But I just like, it's not as cut and dry as Naomi O'Leary and others would make it out to be. And they just really want to be these fucking Woodward and Bernstein type journalists who are like, I was just trying to get the story out there and these people are trying to muzzle me. And it's just like, No, you weren't. You never have. And the
Yeah.
people who are actually doing those stories have been defunded, like the ditch.
Yeah.
So,
Wasn't one of the other ones like? Oh, maybe it wasn't even a lawsuit over it, but Mary Lou McDonald said that what's her name? Helen McEntee needed to be taken out.
yeah, that was the Fine
And
Gael
it-
thing from last
And
week.
it was all
yeah.
reported on as if like they were like she threatened
right.
violence.
Yeah,
She threatened to disappear, Helen McEntee.
Yeah.
As
Because we
opposed
know
to,
about their history. We know what they
yeah.
mean when they say that.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna make a cup of tea.
Yeah, cool. All right, I'll make a coffee, I guess.
Yeah.
Join the Ligers on patreon.com/CelticLigers, where for just €5 a month you can have access to a bonus hour each week in the back catalog. Roar.